welcome our 4th District Congressman Tom Cole.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, it's pretty hard to introduce somebody that everybody in the room already knows. I'm willing to bet that the majority of you certainly voted for the senator in the primary. And everybody in this room that could vote in the general, I promise you, voted for him in the general. So you know him pretty well. And you put a lot of faith in him and a lot of confidence in him. But when you get to work with somebody for 10 years, and we've worked together now for 10 years, you get to know him. I wasn't too impressed with him when I first met him, but I was damn impressed with Christie. So I knew there was something more to him than I could pick up immediately. But during my time in Congress, I've gotten to serve with 5 men that have served representing us in the United States Senate. The first 2 were Don Nichols and Jim Inhofe. And Don Nichols was probably the most politically able guy that I ever met in my life. And he got further in the United States Senate than any Oklahoman's ever gotten. He was Deputy Majority Leader. I don't have to tell anybody here, obviously, about Jim Inhofe. Probably nobody more tenacious in defending our military bases, building roads and infrastructure. I mean, it was Oklahoma, Oklahoma, Oklahoma. Tom Coburn was the 3rd person I was privileged to serve with, and he was probably the most politically principled person that I've ever met. And he operated that way every day. And probably the most personally principled person I've ever served with is James Langford, a new colleague that Markwayne had. Markwayne, I think, is a pretty remarkable person. And I mean that in all sincerity. You know, Congress is like a small town, and Senate even smaller than the House. But 435 people in one body, 100 in the other, you get to know the people individually. I like to say everybody knows who ties the church. Everybody knows who gives to the girls' softball team and the boys' baseball team. Everybody knows who you can borrow a lawnmower from. Everybody knows who'll bring the lawnmower back with gas. They all know one another. And if you ask the people that Markwayne has worked with for the last 10 years, they would probably tell you he's the friendliest person in Congress. And he's the friendliest person because he represents the very best qualities, I think, of the people of Oklahoma. Honestly, if you want to know where he stands, he'll tell you. If you've got a question, he'll answer it. If you need help, there's nobody there faster. He's direct, he's decent, he's honest, he's open, and he will go to work for you and fight for you like nobody's business. It's been a great pleasure for me to watch him in the House ascend and now watch him over in the United States Senate. And I guarantee you this, nobody will fight harder for Oklahoma than Markwayne Mullin. My friend, welcome to Stevens County. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I felt like, thank you so much. I felt like when they were auctioning off the apron, I needed to like volunteer my wife to cook for you or something. That was pretty impressive. Tom, thank you. I just want to take a time to love on Tom for a second too, because, and I mean that sincerely, Tom sets at the same spot almost every time. And there isn't anybody that understands the makings of the House, honestly, better than Tom. If you want to get something done, you got to go through Tom. And then I'll tell you how much people recognize that. Today he sits on the Rules Committee as the chairman, and there isn't a single bill that can get to the floor unless he gives it a nod. Not a single bill. I would argue to say that your representative, Tom Cole, is probably one of the most powerful guys in Washington, D.C. right now in the House of Representatives. And you don't, listen, you don't become the chairman of that committee by accident. It is because people put a tremendous amount of trust in you, because one, they know you're going to be honest, and two, they know your heart's always going to be in the right spot, and that's where Tom is. And by the way, late night in the votes, he's a good guy to get to know too, because he's the life of the party there at the house too, right, Tom? Guys, thank you so much again. I want to make sure I thank Stevens County for this opportunity. Last year I was here. It was quite a little bit different of a barnstorm I was involved in, and on the drive here, I could actually breathe, because the last time I was driving here, my heart felt like it was about ready to jump out of my chest. And so I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to come back. You guys do a great job. And some other people we need to love on too is our law enforcement. I know we got guys here in uniform. I'm sure there's some guys in here that's not in uniform. Thank you all. I say this all the time. They're willing to go home last. They literally will make sure we get home to our family, who love us as much as their family loves them, and they're willing to go home last to make sure we make it home to our family. And you can't ever, that's not something you're taught, that's something that's instilled inside of you. Another group of people we need to recognize are veterans too. All of our veterans, stand up please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you guys. Here's how it goes on that. I wouldn't be doing my job, Tom wouldn't be doing his job, and no other elected official in here would be doing our job if you didn't do your job first and do it well. And so I truly mean this, thank you. I get the opportunity to go up there and fight for our values because you gave me that opportunity before you even knew me. Now, let me just kind of spin a little bit and tell you what type of fight we're up against. Because, man, we are in a fight. And that fight is nothing short of a true life or death situation. It's a fight that I say all the time, we don't have an option but to win. We have to win. Losing is not an option, because if we lose our republic. If we lose what has been given and entrusted to us to pass down to the next generation. But in order for us to know what type of fight we're in, we got to recognize the fight, right? We got to see it. If you're educated on what you're up against, then I believe you will understand a little bit more what you're facing. Christy and I, my beautiful wife, who's been traveling with me all day, and it's been kind of an emotional day today, right? We moved our first son into Oklahoma State. Go Pokes, halfway for me, because I've got to tell you something. I got to say halfway on this one, because I've got one son going to Oklahoma State to wrestle and one son going to OU to wrestle. I know. So I'm going to wear a shirt, it's a white one that says America on it when at matches. What's bad is they're all honestly the same weight too. But Jace, we moved him into to Oklahoma State today. We were early this morning. We were hauling clothes and making the beds and making a run to Walmart. And it was a little bit of an emotional time, because Chris and I realized that our normal isn't going to be normal anymore. We have 6 kids. You know why we have 6 kids? Because my wife couldn't leave me alone. Look at this. Right now, I'm kidding about that, but she knows it's true. No, I'm kidding. We actually have three that came natural, and 3 I say we chose. But it's still, people say, how do you do that? It's because it's our normal. But we also do it because we communicate clearly with our kids on what's expected of them. I tell them all the time, there's 4 keys to success: honesty, hard work, respectful, responsible. Honesty, hard work, respectful, responsible. Every one of my kids literally had this wrote in stone, and it's in their rooms. Because I want them to know how they need to be making decisions. Because if you're informed about what you're making decisions on, you're going to understand how to formulate those decisions. The other thing I lay out is boundaries. What is the boundaries in our house? I'm not a micromanager. I give you a lot of freedom. In the companies, I'm not a micromanager. In our companies, I lay out what I expect of our managers, and I tell them, if I start doing your job, then you are not a manager. It's clear. You fix the problem, then tell me how you fixed it. That's great. If I disagree how you fixed it, we're not going to get in an argument over it. I'm just going to say, maybe try this next time, but I'm laying the boundaries on what you have to work with. And I do that when I hire you. In our kids, we lay the boundaries out too. It's pretty clear. You're going to go to church with us. I can't force you to love Jesus, right? I can't. I can plant that seed, but no one can force you to love Jesus. I tell everybody I went to church out of respect for my parents for 19 years. I didn't give my heart to the Lord until I turned 20. But I still went because it's what my parents expected of me. But since I can't make them love Jesus, I've got to lay the boundaries out. And the boundaries are real simple. You better not drink. Better not use drugs. You better not ever lie to me. If you cross those boundaries, there is going to be serious consequences that you have to deal with. And every now and then, with 3 teenage boys in the house, they'll cross a boundary. And when they cross that boundary, we have this thing called boot camp. Boot camp is something you don't want to go through. I guarantee you, you're going to puke. If you don't puke, then I'm going to make you eat something that you're going to want to puke later. Because we're going to get your attention. You're going to have to sit there and say, is it worth it? Was that worth it? Because consequences are part of your decision making. And right now, we have a decision that we have to make in this country. We have been somewhat, I would say, not necessarily asleep at the wheel, but we have slowly been dying a death of 1,000 cuts. And when you get this far, sometimes you do that because you get comfortable in the grounds that you're living in. You get comfortable with sometimes blaming it on somebody else rather than taking a look at yourself and saying, maybe I need to get involved in too, which that isn't the problem here in this room. But sometimes we do that because we're just simply asleep at the wheel because we didn't realize the fight we were fighting. We didn't realize that a fight was actually happening until you woke up one day and you'd been hit 5 times and you go, holy cow, how did I get these 2 black eyes? Guys, we're truly fighting for this country, and I'm going to read you a quote. And the reason why I'm going to read it to you because there's no way I could memorize it. And the name I'm probably going to mess up on. And so if I do, Tom, because you're the history major, don't judge me, okay? But I'm going to read you this quote to understand what we're facing. And I want you to think about it as I read it. In 1956, a Russian communist leader, Nikita Khrushchev, did I say that right? How do you say it then? Good enough? Okay. Khrushchev is how it's broke down on my paper. Khrushchev says, we will take America without firing a shot. We can't expect the American people to jump from capitalism to communism, but we can assist their elected leaders in giving them small doses of socialism until they awaken one day and find they have communism. We do not have to invade the United States. We will destroy it from within. Today I sat on a HELP committee. HELP committee stands for Health, Education, Labor, and Pension. The HELP committee touches every single American. Does anybody in here not have to deal with health? Has anybody here not been educated or having kids or grandkids going through the education system right now? What about labor and what about our retirement plans? I would argue that HELP committee is probably one of the most impactful committees that we have inside the United States Senate today. And do you know who the Democrats have put over the Senate to chair that committee? Bernie Sanders, an open socialist. I'm not calling him names, it's what he is. He says he's a socialist. He has communist ties and he believes that communism has a rightful place in politics. These are his words, these aren't my words. I'm saying exactly what he says, and I have actually repeated those words to him in a hearing. The Democrats chose to put him there because in the Senate, the party in charge has control of the committees. And that party, the way you become a chairman isn't by merit, it's by seniority. The longer you sit there, the more seniority you have as a Democrat. Bernie Sanders is an independent. He's not a Democrat. They chose to put a socialist in charge of your health care, in charge of educating our kids, in charge of retirement. Understand the fight that we're truly against. It was stated to us in 1956 if we simply pay attention to it. In fact, to make the point one more time about how dangerous it is when we start talking about what type of committee he is over, Joseph Stalin once said, education is a weapon whose effects depends on who holds it in their hands and whom it's aimed at. Guys, we're not going to fight communism like we think we're going to fight it. They're destroying us from within. And we all have an obligation to be involved. Too often, we look at D.C. to solve our issues. Too often, when we get upset with politics, we point at Washington, D.C., we point at Congress, and we say, you messed up, it's your fault. That's where the anger is pointed at, and no one's actually paying attention to what's happening right here in our backyard. How do you keep that crap out of your education system? Is make sure that it doesn't get there in the first place because we put good people on the school boards. And you say, well, I don't have time to run. They also tell you that if you want to get something done, ask the busiest person in the room. We don't have a choice. Prayer just didn't get taken out of our schools. We sat back and allowed it to be taken out of our schools. And you want to tear down this country? Take the moral fabric that holds it together out of it. Remove morals from it, and there's nothing else that holds it together. We have an obligation to restore that. We don't have a choice. If COVID taught us anything, it taught us how much our local leaders actually have over our lives. If we know anything, they control so much of our daily lives because we look past it and we only look at Congress for those issues, but we have to start winning the fights locally. You're not just going to wake up one day and be a warrior. You're not going to wake up one day and all of a sudden lose that 100 pounds that you've gained. You're not going to just wake up one day and be in shape. You're not going to wake up one day and just be educated. It takes time. It takes us being involved. It takes us getting in the fight. It takes us winning every single day little bitty victories. This whole thing, woke, is actually a gift by us naming it woke. Because how many of you guys actually know what woke stands for? Anybody? I don't know what woke stands for. I mean, I know the acronym, but I don't know what it actually represents. But it truly represents everything that the Russians have been talking about. Destroying us from within. When we allow the Democrats to not even know simple biology by saying that a man can have a child, ouch, don't know how that works. When you have individuals that's in the president's cabinet that can't tell you the difference between a man and a woman by simple definition of simple biology, how did we get here? How did that happen? I know it's not people in this room, but you do think, how did that happen? It's because we lost control locally. We lost control locally. We allowed people that was wanting to indoctrinate, not educate. We wanted people to get in office that wanted control, not for betterment of their community. We've got to think about what we have lost and how it happened. As I said before, guys, we're in a fight. And a fight that we can't afford to lose. I hate when I find out something that's been right in front of me the whole time and I've been searching for it. And I think, how did that sneak up on me? And then you start looking around and you think, it didn't sneak up on me. It really didn't. I just wasn't paying attention. The signs were there the whole time. If I would have walked around my truck and noticed that my tires were wearing wrong on the front of my truck, I could have avoided the blowout because I had a front end alignment issue and I ran it bald. But because I didn't take the time to look, I got myself in trouble. If I would have paid attention that my waist size went from 30 to 34 in 1 year, I would have probably realized that I was getting fat. That hit home with some of you guys, didn't it? Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But the truth is sometimes we don't pay attention to the sign. When you look in the mirror and your shirt's off, yes, guys, that's really you. It's awful. I quit looking in the mirror the other day. She says I look fine. I was like, I get that, but I'm not 23 anymore. Guys, slowly things around us get comfortable and we don't want to face reality. That's what it comes down to. It slowly just gets comfortable. We slowly allow things to happen when at the same time we have an enemy at hand. I tell my kids all the time, when you allow your boundaries to get pushed, they continue to get pushed until one day you draw the line in the sand, or you're going to wake up and you're going to look back and say, how did I get here? It's because you didn't set boundaries to begin with. You didn't set you a solid no, this is not where I'm going. You said, I'm okay with this and I'll go a little bit farther. Most people just don't jump into it. And I tell people all the time, a thief doesn't become a thief overnight. A thief became a thief because an opportunity was in front of them and they took the first one. And they slowly pushed their boundaries and slowly allowed things to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And guys, that's what we've allowed to happen in our own country underneath our watch. Now, how do we fix it? How do we get back in the fight and start taking control? Well, guys, it's not going to be fixed overnight. It's not going to be fixed with one election. It's not going to be fixed in the next presidential election. It won't. Mind you, guys, they've been trying to destroy us from within since 1956. I remember a conversation I was having with a good friend of mine named Joe Kennedy. Now, you might think, how in the heck does Joe Kennedy and I have anything in common? He's a Democrat from Boston, Massachusetts. He was born into money. I was born into a milk barn without money. I was born a Republican before I even knew I was a Republican. He was born a Democrat and didn't have any choice. He probably thinks cows are in a zoo. I think cows are on your plate. Big difference. He's tall, redheaded, ugly. I'm short, stocky, and handsome. Totally, everything is totally different. People say, well, how are you and Joe so good friends? Because we are really good friends. Honestly, really, really good friends. And I say this, I said, because that flag, we're having the flag. Right here. That flag right there, I believe Joe Kennedy loves this as much as I do. He may be a registered Democrat, but I'm telling you, I guarantee you that guy will fight for this country because his family has proven it and it's part of his blood as much as I would. We can have political difference because politically we have been raised different, and we all make decisions based on two things: the way we're raised and our life experiences. Everybody in here makes decisions that way. His way of thinking is different than mine, but I don't doubt his love for the country. Tulsi Gabbard, She'll call me her brother, and I call her my sister. She's independent now, and I think pretty dang conservative. But people used to say all the time, how are you and Tulsi friends? Because she has proven she'll fight for this flag. Still to this day. But Joe and I, one time, we were sitting in my office, and we're talking about health care. And he was for Obamacare. And for the life of me, I was like, Joe, you cannot tell me this is a good thing. How are you possibly for this? And Joe says, Markwayne, this was 9 years ago. He says, Markwayne, my family has been fighting for health care for this country for 50 years. There's no way I can't stand the fight now. Guys, what have we fought for 50 years consistently? Pro-life? And we finally won it. They have been fighting us from multiple fronts. And one, trying to just truly tear down morality of this country, the moral fabric of this country. They try to get us comfortable in this country, get us lazy, start pointing the fingers and put distrust in Washington, D.C., and start thinking that Washington, D.C. was all our problems, but truly our founding fathers never wanted us to look to Washington, D.C. Actually, Washington, D.C. works the way that it works because it was designed to be chaotic. It was designed to work slow. It was designed by our founding fathers to truly be dysfunctional. They wanted it to be that way because they wanted not us to look towards Washington, D.C. They wanted us to take care of our problems locally at home. But yet every time something goes wrong, that's where we look. We look to Washington, D.C., and while we're doing that, we're overlooking the basis. And at the base, they've been ripping us to shreds. They've infiltrated every part of our life. We can't allow that to happen anymore. So if you take anything away from what I'm saying right now, guys, I hate losing. I'm all in this fight. I can assure you, Christy and I wasn't looking for anything to do. Politics was the last thing in my mind. I didn't realize politics was affecting every aspect of my life until they shut down one of our businesses in 2011 and regulated it out of business. Lord had been stirring us a little bit along the way. Lord had been putting people in our life, but really politics wasn't there for us. So much so that the first political event Christy and I ever went to was the one I stood up and said I was running for Congress, and they asked me that day if I would vote for John Boehner for Speaker, and I had no idea who John Boehner was. Not a clue. The only thing I could think of was, well, it depends on who's running against him. I didn't know he was Speaker. That's how naive and ignorant I was about politics, guys. But I knew setting back wasn't possible. Setting back, doing nothing wasn't okay. And the only way I know how to fight is walk straight towards it. And I'm just confident enough that when I get in that fight, I might just figure it out. It scares my wife to death. She hates that part of me, I'll be honest with you. She gets comfortable and she's okay with it. When I push her outside of her comfort zone, her word is, oh Lord, I want to throw up. And when we get really uncomfortable, she says, oh Jesus, oh Jesus, oh Jesus, oh Jesus, oh Jesus. that is honestly a true statement. I don't know why you put up with me, babe. I would have divorced me. Why have you? I had put you through every one of those gray hairs. I've truly earned those. It's not gray. I mean, your color looks great. So, love you, babe. 26 years, June 14th, and she's still with me. You know why she hasn't divorced me? She says she's not willing to get up half. She's worked too hard for our fortune. she's not going to be worth half of it. Anyways, guys, if you take anything away from what I'm saying tonight, is we don't have an option at this point for you not to get involved. You don't have an option not to get involved in your school board elections anymore. You don't have an option not to get involved in your city council. You don't have an option but be involved because you know the quote I read you from 1956. You know what Stalin said about us, about our education. You're now educated to understand exactly what that quote is and what's been happening to us. We have to take this fight straight back to them. We've got to get our house in order. And we've got to be ready to understand what's happening. And all I ask you is to join those of us that are already serving. Those of us that are already put our name out there, man, I get it. It's sickening and it gets personal. As I said on the drive here last year, I wanted to throw up. My heart was thumping in my chest. Running for office is not easy. And I'll be quite frank, if any of you guys actually enjoy campaigning, you are sick in the head. Oh, it's so fun to meet people. It's so fun to get rejected too. Oh, I voted for you. And then the next person, oh, I voted for you. And then after a while, 100% of people voted for you. You're thinking, I didn't get 100% of the vote. Which one of you guys are liars? And it's really good when you look at your social media sites, because everybody out there loves you. I tell this to my wife all the time. I don't read social media. Feels like, what? I don't. And the reason why I don't is because I want to assume that everybody loves me. And she says, oh, bless your heart. But it's true, because I don't want people to change my attitude to someone that I don't know. If you're going to be in politics, you got to have a thick skin. You got to be able to just move. And so I get what I'm asking you to do isn't comfortable. But it's not okay to be comfortable anymore. It's not okay. Because we're going to lose our country if we don't. And you got to understand, this fight is for the rest of our life. Truly the rest of our life. This country was entrusted on us to pass down in better shape than we found it. And I can truly tell you, and there isn't anybody in this room that can say that this country is better today than it was a short few years ago. We can't. So it's incumbent on us to get in this fight. And we must win it. I hate losing. And so all I'm saying is just get in the fight with me. We'll figure it out as we start going along. We will win it because right's on our side. And my wife says I'm stubborn. I say I'm determined. What do you say? Are we determined to win this country back? You bet we are. I can guarantee you one thing. I won't expect you to do anything more than what I'm doing. And I promise you, I am all in. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.